Smoke floated from the Chrysler 300 while a mother screamed in her driveway, and the whole block felt quiet, like it already understood what happened, even before the sirens came. Shell casings rolled near the curb while neighbors peeked from porches, and nothing about that moment felt random or quick. It felt like something finally caught them, something built over years of money, scams, pressure, and quiet hate that moved through Detroit streets without warning. People later argued about what started it, but the truth lived deeper than rap or beef. To understand how it reached that point, you have to go back to where everything started on the West Side. Detroit's West Side carried its own rhythm in the late 2000s, and the 6 Mile blocks felt different from other parts of the city, with abandoned houses sitting next to packed porches and the streets shifting between danger and normal life without any real warning. Kids learned early to watch everything around them, and during those years, the neighborhood earned nicknames like the 6 Mile Bronx because the energy felt gritty but alive, with young people trying to figure out who they were supposed to become. The streets were rough but familiar, and those blocks shaped everyone growing up there, whether they realized it or not. Back then, Lonnie, Javar, Biggs, Paid Will, and Meso were just kids trying to stay busy in a place that forced you to grow up fast, and none of them carried the kind of reputation people later attached to the band gang name. They walked the same cracked sidewalks, hung around the same corner stores, and found fun in moments that might seem small to outsiders. But those days built their bond long before anyone thought about scams or rap careers. They were boys moving through a neighborhood that demanded toughness, but still allowed enough space for friendships to feel like family. During those early teenage years, they spent long afternoons in basements with cheap microphones and loudspeakers, recording rough songs while cracking jokes and arguing about who had the best verse. The music started as something to pass time, something to make each other laugh, and nobody treated it like a real future. They wore regular clothes, figured out their flows slowly, and enjoyed the feeling of creating something with friends who understood each other without much explanation. Those sessions helped them see they had a unique sound, even if they didn't say it out loud yet. At the same time, the neighborhood taught them things they didn't ask to learn, because kids often had cousins hustling or neighbors caught in dangerous situations, and survival felt like a skill instead of a luxury. They watched people chase fast money and saw how easy it was to slip into trouble when the city kept pushing the same pressures on everyone. That environment shaped them quietly, forcing them to notice which paths were dangerous and which ones they wanted to avoid, even if the lines sometimes blurred. Detroit created a mix of ambition and risk, and young people learned quickly that every choice carried weight. The name band gang came from simple teenage slang about chasing money, because a band meant $1,000, and they used the term playfully before it turned into something heavier. They called themselves a money crew without actually having money, but the name made them feel connected and confident, and nobody imagined it would become a brand recognized across the city. It felt like an inside joke at first, something only their circle understood, something to shout in videos or write on notebooks during class. Rap eventually pulled their attention harder than anything else because it gave them a voice and a way out of the patterns they saw in their neighborhood, and they realized creating music felt safer and smarter than trying to match the street hustle around them. They noticed how people responded when they dropped tracks online, and they liked knowing they could build something real with their talent instead of following the dangerous footsteps of others. The music offered hope that did not exist in many places around 6 Mile, and they leaned into it because it felt like the first positive path they could control. Even in those early years, the city around them was changing because Detroit was shifting through economic problems, neighborhood closures, and increasing violence that made young people more vulnerable to the pressures going on around them. What felt like a safe childhood started disappearing slowly, and the boys sensed the streets becoming colder as they moved deeper into their teens. The environment was preparing them for challenges they didn't yet understand, and the decisions they made during those years would shape everything that came next. The story that followed did not start with scams or violence, because it started with kids chasing dreams in a neighborhood that forced them to grow faster than they wanted. Detroit moved different when band gangs started finding their sound, and the 6 Mile side watched them shift from loud kids to real voices carrying the West Side. The early spark came when they dropped the Band Gang or No Gang video online, and that clip hit Detroit faster than anyone expected because it showed young dudes with white buffs, heavy True Religion outfits, and a swagger that felt natural on camera. The video looked homemade and raw, but people felt the confidence, and that confidence pushed the clip across neighborhoods like Puritan, Livernois, and Wyoming without any real promotion. The city liked how they wore buffs the same way older legends did, and that detail made people pay closer attention. The video built a wave that hit every high school party on the West Side, and kids replayed it because the style felt familiar but exciting at the same time. Detroit's underground scene during that era was still forming, because this was before Babyface Ray earned legendary status, before Sada Baby gained viral traction, and before Babytron carried the scam style into the mainstream. The scene did not have a solid structure yet, and every neighborhood had its own potential crew waiting to be discovered. Band Gang walked into that space with timing that felt perfect because they offered energy that Detroit rarely saw from teenagers. The older generation still remembered the mid-'80s era of street-heavy rap, and Detroit was searching for a modern version that reflected current realities. Band Gang filled that gap in ways people did not expect, and their presence pushed Detroit's underground scene forward without them trying to be pioneers. The local fame arrived slowly, then picked up speed around house parties, where DJs played their tracks, and people reacted hard because the music matched the energy inside those packed basements. House parties on 6 Mile carried their own culture, and the moment Band Gang songs played, you could feel the shift in the room. Their music spread across block gatherings, backyard cookouts, and small clubs, turning their neighborhood respect into citywide recognition. Detroit listeners valued authenticity deeply, and Band Gang offered a voice that came directly from their streets. The early buzz carried them into conversations near West Warren, Joy Road, and Schoolcraft, and people from other neighborhoods started asking who these young guys were. Every new release strengthened their presence, and Detroit began treating Band Gang as something bigger than a local crew. The collaborations followed as their momentum grew, and outsiders noticed the movement building around them. The West Coast group Shoreline Mafia reached out because they respected the gritty Detroit sound and liked Band Gang's raw approach. That collaboration created new exposure that stretched beyond their city and pulled new listeners toward their catalog. T Grizzly also recognized their energy around the time he gained massive attention with First Day Out, and that respect opened new doors for Band Gang within the growing Detroit rap ecosystem. Outsiders gravitated toward their authenticity because nothing about Band Gang felt forced, and every feature made their name wider without losing the core identity that made people listen initially. Their music identity formed clearly during this period because they leaned into fast flows and aggressive beats that matched the Detroit style taking shape throughout the city. Producers built beats around heavy bass patterns that rattled cars on West Chicago and Mac, and Band Gang learned to ride those beats with flows that sounded sharp and confident. Their voices blended well over Detroit's gritty production style, and listeners appreciated the rawness that remained even as their music quality improved. The audience recognized their chemistry, and each track sounded like a natural extension of their personalities rather than a studio creation. The Detroit style carried signatures that fans understood instantly, and Band Gang quickly became one of the groups shaping that sound. They stood out because the 6 Mile attitude carried a distinct flavor that gave the group power on camera and in music. The crew had obvious chemistry, and their videos showed friends who moved with real trust rather than manufactured unity. People loved how they acted naturally while filming, cracking jokes or flexing just enough to show confidence without seeming disconnected from their environment. Their presence looked real on screen, and Detroit respected real energy above everything else. Band Gang displayed a balance of fun and seriousness that adult viewers recognized, and younger fans admired the teamwork behind their movement. The fact that they came from the same blocks made their identity stronger, and that unity translated into their music clearly. With more attention arriving, the tension started building slowly, because fame carried expectations that forced them to maintain louder lifestyles. People around Detroit paid close attention to rising rappers, and attention often brought jealousy within certain neighborhoods or rival circles. Success created internal pressure because the crew wanted to keep improving while dealing with new eyes watching every move. Street politics around 6 Mile reacted strongly to new fame, and the pressure to prove themselves grew heavier as their name traveled farther. Money entered the picture more often, and appearances started mattering because Detroit audiences responded to confidence and flash. The need to earn faster mixed with the demands of rising fame, and that combination created a shift inside the group that would influence the next phase of their journey. Band Gang had become a real movement in Detroit by this time, and everything from their music to their image carried influence across the city. The rise seemed fast from the outside, but it came from years of recording, hanging out, observing the city, and learning how the streets responded to young voices. Their popularity created momentum they could not step away from, and the growing attention around their name pushed them toward choices that shaped the direction of their future. The success felt good, but the pressure around them developed quietly, and no one could predict how heavy that pressure would become later. Detroit money culture pushed young people toward fast hustles, and Band Gang grew up around that environment while watching older dudes run different schemes across 6 Mile blocks without hiding their success. The early scam attempts started small because teenagers were only testing what they heard older swipers talk about, and the first steps involved cheap stolen credit card numbers passed around by friends who barely understood where the information came from. Kids on the west side treated it like a harmless trick at first, and some used small purchases from corner stores just to see if the cards worked without getting rejected. They did not approach it like a serious operation yet, and the early swipes came from curiosity mixed with the desire to get small wins without much risk. Detroit already had deep scam roots during those years because people shared leaked card numbers openly, and swipe culture existed long before band gang arrived on the scene. The dark web made credit card access easier, and young people figured out fast that they could buy large dumps of card information for low prices, which gave them real tools without needing connections. The city treated swiping like another skill, and many neighborhoods had quiet conversations about which cards worked best and which stores allowed transactions without complications. Other cities viewed this world differently, but Detroit built a reputation for turning young swipers into serious earners because knowledge passed quickly through the streets. The scam culture became a blueprint that kids could follow without needing older mentors, and the internet created access that shifted the city in a major way. Band gang eventually took swiping more seriously than most young crews, and their bedrooms started turning into card labs with tools people usually saw in real fraud cases. They bought embossers to stamp stolen numbers into blank cards, and they used magnetic writers to load stolen data into the card strips before testing them at stores. The foils and templates scattered around their homes made their rooms look like makeshift factories, and the members learned which materials delivered the highest quality cards. They kept these labs quiet inside 6-mile houses because secrecy kept them safe from suspicious neighbors or potential rivals. Their everyday environment shifted into a workspace where machines hummed late at night while they prepared fresh batches of cards for upcoming moves. The process of cloning cards became second nature to them after weeks of trial and error, and they learned how the numbers connected to certain banks responded differently during transactions. They watched online tutorials, shared tips with other young scammers, and studied how payment systems flagged suspicious purchases. Every successful swipe taught them new lessons, and their labs improved as they upgraded machines and refined their methods. They practiced with the small transactions early on to avoid getting flagged, and once they mastered those basics, they moved into larger purchases that delivered bigger returns. The scam methods evolved quickly, and the labs eventually looked like organized workstations instead of sloppy teenage rooms. Their first road trips came when they realized city stores held too much risk, and Walmart locations across Michigan and neighboring states offered opportunities to strike repeatedly without drawing instant attention. They used cloned cards to buy $500 gift cards because that amount often passed store systems without manual review, and the crew packed into cars to hit as many Walmarts as possible before security caught patterns. They drove through places like Benton Harbor, Lansing, Toledo, and even deeper into states like Indiana or Arkansas when they felt confident. They kept the purchases fast because speed protected them from unnecessary questions, and they left each store with bags filled with legitimate gift cards purchased using cloned information. Those trips became routines, and they documented the timing of each location to avoid returning too soon. The success on those runs encouraged expansion because they needed networks to move the gift cards after returning home, and they found local buyers who purchased cards slightly under face value without asking many questions. Some fences bought hundreds of cards at a time and cleaned them through local markets or online platforms, and those buyers kept the money flowing smoothly. Band gang realized the importance of these networks because gift cards needed fast turnaround for cash conversion, and trusted buyers protected them from getting trapped in suspicious exchanges. Their work moved from small hustles to a real system because everyone played specific roles that kept the money flowing consistently. Rumors soon started spreading across Detroit about their earnings, and people said paid Will touched over $1 million from scam operations alone. These stories traveled quickly across 6-mile blocks, and rival groups paid attention because that kind of money created envy in areas already dealing with economic struggle. Whether these numbers were perfectly accurate never mattered because perception shaped the streets, and people treated band gang like they had limitless resources. The idea that young rappers had access to that level of fast cash affected how other crews viewed them, and the attention placed greater weight on every move they made. Money myths created new problems for them, and jealousy quietly built pressure inside Detroit neighborhoods. The scam operation continued growing when they branched into the AT&T phone scheme, which involved using stolen identities to open fake accounts and secure brand new iPhones billed to unsuspecting victims. They learned how to access personal information through online leaks, and they used that data to create fake AT&T customer profiles. They ordered expensive Apple devices under those names and resold them through underground markets where buyers did not ask questions. This scam spread far beyond Michigan because they targeted stores nationwide, and the profits pushed their earnings into another tier. Each new success taught them deeper details about corporate systems, and the entire operation expanded until multiple states became part of their routine circuit. Scamming eventually blended into their identity completely because the lifestyle shaped their music and public image. Detroit rappers admired how openly Band Gang embraced scam culture without revealing technical details, and younger artists followed their style closely. Their music referenced swiping, cloning, and running plays, and listeners from across the underground scene appreciated the authenticity in their lyrics. They did not fabricate stories for entertainment because their world already offered enough real content. Detroit's scam rap movement exploded from their example, and Band Gang became foundational figures in a culture that stretched far beyond their original circle. As their fraud empire grew, the hustle pulled them deeper into a lifestyle powered by fast moves, secret operations, and constant pressure to stay ahead of both rivals and law enforcement. The switches they made during these years shaped everything that followed, and the scam blueprint they built created opportunities, conflicts, risks, and a reputation that would follow them throughout their rise in Detroit. Band Gang's name kept growing through Detroit, and their lifestyle began shifting from quiet neighborhood movement to loud city presence once real scam money started flowing. They carried thick cash stacks and videos and posted pictures showing money spread across tables or fanned across laps, and people noticed how often they flashed new outfits and expensive shoes. They wore white buffs in nearly every clip, and those glasses meant status in Detroit because people associated buffs with high earners and dangerous reputations. Some members even wore chains shaped like credit cards, and that choice told outsiders exactly how confident they felt about their hustle. The attention on social media grew fast, and fans admired how young they were while still looking financially comfortable. The visibility brought new problems because scammers usually survive by staying quiet, and rappers usually grow their brand by staying loud. That conflict put Band Gang in a strange position because they wanted fame from music and security from scamming. They liked posting successes online because it attracted fans and helped their music spread. But those same posts opened doors to surveillance and unwanted curiosity. The noise around them built faster than expected, and they learned that visibility created eyes watching from angles they did not consider. The challenge came from balancing two lifestyles that did not cooperate easily, and the pressures from each side pulled them into riskier situations. Industry attention arrived next because labels and artists from other cities noticed how Detroit sounded different, and Band Gang helped shape that sound with confidence. More collaborations came their way because people respected their authenticity and their unique chemistry, and groups like Shoreline Mafia wanted to tap into that Detroit energy. The growing influence placed their music in new markets, and they enjoyed seeing fans outside Detroit repeat their slang and follow their releases. The attention also came from journalists, executives, and digital platforms that wanted to highlight the rising Detroit scene. This exposure created new opportunities, and the crew liked earning respect from people who rarely looked towards Detroit before. The increased spotlight also caught the eyes of people who monitored online financial crimes, and some investigators looked deeper once they noticed posts showing expensive items inconsistent with typical teenage income. The style of flexing attracted different kinds of watchers, and many of those watchers did not care about their music success. Surveillance started quietly for them, and the city felt smaller once they understood that visibility attracted attention from law enforcement as easily as it attracted fans. The industry eyes pushed them forward, but the surveillance eyes followed closely, and the line between those two forms of attention grew more blurry as the group expanded. The streets watched them heavily because Detroit neighborhoods knew money signals better than anyone, and people knew how quickly wealth created enemies. Rivals noticed their sudden shift from regular teens to visibly wealthy young rappers, and curiosity spread around 6 Mile blocks and other West Side areas. People questioned where the money came from, and rumors about scam profits moved through circles that viewed them as young threats rather than artists. Some rivals wanted to test them because visibility created pressure to respond and protect their name. The streets always tracked fast rises, and Band Gang's success did not escape that cycle. Their reputation shifted slowly because people began seeing them as swipers who rapped instead of rappers who swiped, and that perception shaped how outsiders engaged with them. Fans repeated lines from their music that referenced scam details, and those lyrics raised eyebrows among older hustlers who already respected fraud culture. Band Gang became the group associated with modern Detroit scam identity, and that association built a lane for them in the rap scene. At the same time, the label of those swipe dudes made them targets for rivals who wanted to challenge their hustle or take advantage of their visibility. Their fame created expectations they needed to meet, and their name carried weight that sparked tensions in circles beyond music. The lifestyle contradictions created problems because they needed cameras for promotion, but needed silence for safety, and both goals pulled them in conflicting directions. The rap industry required constant visibility, and fans wanted updates, videos, and proof that success continued. The scam world required invisibility, and success depended on staying low and avoiding unnecessary attention. These two lifestyles did not work smoothly together, and Band Gang lived in the center of that conflict daily. They wore expensive clothes in videos and kept heavy cash in photos, but they also understood those same visuals made them stand out in ways that brought danger. They balanced both worlds without slowing down, and the contradictions started shaping the decisions they made. Their environment added additional pressure because Detroit's culture rewards confidence and strength, and they felt obligated to match the energy expected from rising stars. Fans expected them to look successful, and rivals expected them to back up their image in real life. The attention created excitement, but it also created responsibility because every move they made felt recorded by either supporters or enemies. People expected growth, music drops, expensive purchases, and constant presence, and Band Gang responded by delivering everything with consistency. They carried themselves like artists and street figures at the same time, and their success fed into the expectations placed on them. As their visibility increased, the reality of their situation grew more complicated because fame made them too recognizable in places where anonymity would have protected them. They could not walk through certain neighborhoods without getting stared at, and the combination of popularity and money created risks they tried managing carefully. The attention surrounding their name caused pressure from people inside and outside their circle, and their rising influence attracted groups that viewed them as growing competitors. This pattern followed nearly every Detroit artist with a fast rise, and Band Gang felt those pressures more intensely because their wealth drew eyes that music alone would not generate. The crew continued enjoying their success because the attention confirmed their growth, and they believed their music deserved recognition. They enjoyed seeing Detroit gain national respect, and they felt proud contributing to a movement that influenced the entire city. Still, the dangers of being too visible lingered behind every celebration because visibility brought surveillance, jealousy, and expectations that pressed them from multiple angles. They moved forward with confidence, but the increasing spotlight created cracks in their safety, and the consequences of that visibility waited quietly around the corner, ready to shape the next chapter of their story. Detroit streets rarely stay peaceful when young crews start touching real money, and Band Gang learned that lesson slowly as their name grew heavier on the west side. The tension with TNO and TMC started building because those groups already held influence in parts of Detroit, and they noticed how quickly Band Gang shifted from regular kids into a crew with money, movement, and rising respect. The jealousy did not come from music, and most of it formed around scam profits because fraud money created a different kind of status in Detroit. TNO and TMC members watched Band Gang closely, and some questioned how young dudes gained wealth faster than older hustlers. The competition was quiet at first, but the pressure grew as rumors spread that Band Gang held big stacks from cloned card runs. Detroit treated respect like currency, and money often shaped how people talked about crews, so the idea that Band Gang made large amounts through gift card scams created ego problems between circles already familiar with fraud. The roots of the tension were not dramatic, and the pressure built naturally because Detroit neighborhoods always tracked fast rises, especially when those rises involved illegal money. TNO and TMC had members who participated in fraud too, and they viewed Band Gang as competition because swiping became a major lane for young hustlers across the city. The streets cared deeply about hierarchy, and Band Gang's quick success moved them into lanes that other crews did not want to share. The situation reached a breaking point in 2016 when an incident connected to Band Gang members left a 5-year-old girl permanently disabled, and that moment pushed the tension from street whispers into active conflict. The details showed how dangerous the pressure became because shootings involving innocent children crossed lines that entire cities took seriously. The girl's injury crushed the community emotionally, and families living in that area felt the impact long after. The shooting amplified the already growing beef between Band Gang and their rivals, and every group involved understood that retaliation would follow quickly. Detroit held a long history of revenge cycles, and this event placed multiple crews on alert as people waited for the next move. Retaliation came months later on Biltmore Street when Band Gang members Martez Bailey and Khalil Wilson carried out a drive-by attack targeting TNO and TMC rivals. The shooting involved a .45 caliber handgun and an Uzi loaded with a 50-round drum, and both men opened fire on a house believed to contain their intended targets. The hail of bullets tore through the building and struck an innocent woman inside, leaving her seriously injured. The intended target survived the attack, but the message traveled quickly through Detroit. The shooting demonstrated how the beef escalated from minor shots to heavy weapon use, and the fallout created deeper problems that extended far beyond the individuals involved. The fraud money played a major role in these conflicts because scamming did not operate on traditional territory systems, and crews clashed based on ego rather than physical turf. Rivals viewed band gangs' financial success as disrespectful because they believed swiping belonged to certain circles that built the culture. People used pride to define superiority in this environment, and money increasing inside one crew caused pressure inside others that wanted to maintain dominance. The streets monitored band gang spending patterns, and every new purchase placed another spotlight on them. Rival groups kept mental scorecards about who held the most money, and band gangs' growing fortune created new waves of envy that added fuel to the fire. Escalation came naturally during this period, as online taunts and real-life encounters pushed tension higher with each month. Members from rival crews used Instagram and Facebook to send coded messages or mock opponents, and those posts spread quickly among Detroit youth. Social media allowed street disputes to gain wider attention, and people used comment sections to provoke enemies publicly. Shootouts between rival crews occurred around several neighborhoods like 6 Mile, Schoolcraft, and Finkel, and the rising conflicts caused residents to fear routine interactions that occurred near stores, gas stations, and apartment complexes. Crews formed alliances based on shared enemies or mutual interests, and both sides recruited younger members eager to prove themselves or defend their neighborhoods. The digital and physical worlds blended together, and conflicts no longer stayed contained within one block. The pattern reflected what happened in many cities when young artists mixed illegal money, rising fame, and street expectations, and Detroit followed the same cycle without exaggerated elements. The formula often included quick financial growth mixed with limited guidance, and rival crews responded through violence rather than communication. Band gang members stood in the center of this pressure because their name carried weight in both rap and scam culture, and people expected them to defend their status often. The problems developed from the natural progression of youth under stress, and the conflicts mirrored situations in places like Chicago, St. Louis, and Philadelphia. The outcomes followed patterns as money increased, pride grew, and retaliation cycles deepened. Band gangs shifted from carefree teens into real targets during these years because people associated them with money, responsibility, and influence across multiple Detroit neighborhoods. The crew no longer enjoyed the freedom they once had as kids recording music in basements, and every move required awareness of who might be watching. The pressure from rivals reduced their ability to enjoy normal life, and the streets forced them to navigate situations that demanded caution and preparation. Their early successes brought unexpected responsibilities, and their popularity placed them in positions that attracted envy, danger, and constant attention. The shift happened slowly, but once it settled in, band gang became part of Detroit's deeper street conflicts rather than spectators watching from the outside. Detroit beef rarely starts from one moment, and the tension between band gang and cash gang grew from older neighborhood politics that existed long before the two crews recorded their first songs. The West Side held long-running issues based on family ties, school zones, childhood fights, and quiet alliances, and those problems passed into newer generations without any real pause. Cash gang members grew up near areas connected to older conflicts with crews linked to band gang, and the younger boys inherited those attitudes without needing detailed explanations. Rap competition added more heat because both groups aimed to represent Detroit, and the proximity between their neighborhoods made it easy for minor issues to gain weight quickly. The energy between them shifted slowly as both groups released music, and the streets watched the rivalry develop into something stronger. The situation exploded when band gang Lonnie had his chain snatched during a moment that rivals captured and pushed across the internet, and that chain meant something personal because it represented one of his fallen friends. The incident happened while he was out of town, and the loss spread across social platforms faster than any music video he had released. People online treated the moment like a major victory for Cash Gang, and rivals replayed the clip repeatedly while mocking Lonnie in comments and captions. Detroit placed heavy value on chains because they symbolized pride and status, and losing one in public created embarrassment that often demanded retaliation. Lonnie remained calm publicly, but the disrespect started a new level of pressure across both crews. Social media heated the situation with live streams where Cash Gang members taunted band gang and claimed the moment proved a shift in power. Memes circulated referencing the incident, and the narrative became that Band Gang lost their edge or slipped in ways rivals expected. The internet exaggerated reactions naturally, but the conversations came from real feelings inside Detroit because people viewed the incident as more than a robbery. The online conversations framed Band Gang as vulnerable, and rivals used those conversations to push the idea that the group lost dominance on the West Side. Fans on Instagram and Reddit repeated the narrative, and the repeated mockery created emotional pressure that fueled real-life decisions. The taunts became ammunition that encouraged younger members from both sides to participate in escalating behavior. The tensions appeared offline shortly after because several incidents began stacking up around Detroit studios and parking lots. Car shootings occurred near areas where artists recorded late at night, and members moved with increased caution when pulling into sessions around Schoolcraft and Plymouth. One studio got sprayed with bullets after someone tracked a member's location through a social media post, and that shooting pushed both crews into a state of constant alert. Each incident received attention inside their neighborhoods because the danger surrounded any building they walked into, and members understood the retaliation cycle could begin at any moment. Hit attempts occurred on both sides, and they developed patterns similar to earlier Detroit beefs between other young crews. The events were not dramatized because the police confirmed several shootings occurred with connections to both groups. Cash Gang gained popularity around the same time Band Gang dealt with their internal pressures, and their rise felt fast to many Detroit followers because they pushed new music consistently and appeared younger to fans who appreciated their energy. They viewed Band Gang as an older group holding space that newer artists wanted to enter, and competition arrived naturally as their name expanded across the city. Cash Gang members believed they deserved the spotlight that Band Gang once occupied, and the idea of replacing them motivated their behavior both online and offline. The tension increased because both groups shared similar supporters, and fans often chose sides publicly, which added fuel to an already unstable situation. Detroit youth embraced Cash Gang's aggressive style, and their growth created new waves of confidence that pushed the rivalry further. Online communities played a large role in shaping the public understanding of the situation because people outside Detroit treated the rivalry like entertainment. Comment sections on Instagram, Reddit threads, and YouTube discussions called the period open season because both crews took losses, survived shootings, and engaged in confrontations across the city. The comments rarely reflected the seriousness behind the violence, and many fans ignored the reality that both crews faced deadly threats daily. Detroit insiders viewed the situation differently because they watched neighborhoods shift in response to the rising conflict, and many recognized that the events represented deeper community issues rather than simple rap competition. The conversations online pushed the rivalry into a spotlight that neither group fully controlled, and the perception often shaped the actions that followed. The pressure built quietly as the conflict deepened, and many people inside Detroit noticed how tension grew without slowing down. Security concerns increased for everyone involved, and daily routines changed for members who once moved freely across their neighborhoods. People monitored their surroundings constantly and noticed unfamiliar cars or suspicious behavior near houses or recording studios. Friends and associates warned each other about rumors circulating through Detroit streets, and those rumors shaped decisions about where to travel and who to trust. The danger arrived in waves rather than single moments, and both sides felt the weight of that pressure long before the wider public noticed. Band Gang experienced a shift during this period because they no longer operated like carefree teens with music dreams, and their lives changed permanently as violence surrounded them. The pressure moved through their circles slowly, and the combined weight of street conflict, rap expectations, and scam lifestyle created a dangerous environment for young artists trying to survive. They continued releasing music and appearing in videos, but the tension haunted every step forward because rivals believed the chain incident placed Band Gang in a weakened position. The group faced more threats every year, and Detroit streets recognized quickly that the rivalry reached a level where normal problems escalated fast. The slow rise of pressure eventually shaped the events that followed, and the conflict marked a turning point in their story because respect, money, and survival all collided at the same time. Band Gang grew their scam operation fast, and while Detroit watched them gain money and influence, the federal agencies watching from a distance gathered information slowly without saying a word. The FBI already monitored identity theft cases across Michigan, and the Secret Service investigated card fraud nationwide, so Band Gang's pattern eventually touched agencies that specialized in these crimes. The United States Postal Inspection Service joined the investigation because many stolen identities involved mail access, and Walmart's Global Investigations team contributed because the company noticed suspicious purchases happening across multiple states. Each agency tracked small pieces of information, and those pieces connected over time until Band Gang appeared clearly on their radar. The investigation moved without interruption, and the crew remained unaware of the attention building around them. The digital paper trail made everything easier for investigators because Band Gang bought stolen card numbers through online sources that often left transaction footprints. Agents tracked certain dark web vendors who supplied large batches of stolen information, and those vendors kept logs that eventually matched accounts used by Band Gang members. Credit card dumps contained purchase histories, and investigators traced unusual activity patterns that connected to the same regions Band Gang traveled during their Walmart runs. ATM logs and point-of-sale records revealed consistent use of cloned cards with matching magnetic strip data, and those patterns helped agencies outline the structure of the entire operation. The AT&T scam created additional data points because fake accounts required stolen identities, and those accounts left digital trails that led back to the crew. Every move created documentation, and the agents used those details quietly as the case built. The investigation gained momentum when federal teams executed search warrants on several Detroit homes, and agents found 4 fully equipped card labs used by Band Gang members. The evidence rooms held embossers, magnetic strip writers, blank cards, foils, and laptops containing stolen credit card information. Agents documented the machines carefully because they wanted to prove that the crew did not operate casually, but ran an organized operation capable of producing high-quality cloned cards. The recovered laptops included text files listing thousands of stolen card numbers, and investigators used those files to estimate the scale of the fraud. The discovery of multiple labs confirmed the crew's involvement in a large network that operated across state lines, and the evidence made the upcoming indictment unavoidable. The 2018 indictment landed heavy across Detroit when a federal grand jury charged 8 members connected to the scheme. The names included Toriano Adams, Anthony Adams, Devin Simmons, Atif Brown, O.D. Williams, Danico Adams, Rodney Gist, and Tyan Jackson. They faced charges including conspiracy to commit wire fraud, aggravated identity theft, and money laundering. The indictment included details describing how the crew used cloned cards to buy gift cards at Walmart stores nationwide and used stolen identities to open fake AT&T accounts. The documents explained years of tracking by undercover teams and digital analysts, and the charges listed purchases that occurred across states like Ohio, Illinois, Arkansas, and Missouri. The scale of the indictment showed how long investigators monitored the operation before making their move. Meso was present during one of the major raids, and his reaction became Detroit legend because he reportedly ran from the scene once he realized agents surrounded the area. He took off through a residential neighborhood and moved toward a perimeter near a prison yard, hiding there because he believed officers would never search that location. He stayed out of sight long enough to avoid immediate capture, and his temporary escape spread quickly across Detroit streets. People repeated the story because it sounded unbelievable, and the image of a rapper hiding near a prison fence became one of the strangest moments of the entire case. Authorities eventually located and arrested him, but his initial escape showed how unexpected the raid felt to the crew. Biggs faced a different reality because he ended up on house arrest during the ongoing legal process, and that restricted movement added internal stress to Band Gang as they tried to maintain their music presence. House arrest forced him to record cautiously and stay home during critical months when the crew needed unity and mobility. The internal chaos shaped their dynamic because some members faced federal pressure while others continued making music, and the group struggled to manage the emotional weight of the situation. Their world changed rapidly in a short period, and the crew tried adjusting while the legal system built its case. The sentences arrived over the next few years as members took plea deals or faced trials, and penalties varied depending on involvement. Some members received 2 to 8 years in federal prison for fraud-related charges, especially those involved in the AT&T component of the operation. Others connected to violent incidents received far heavier sentences, such as Martez Bailey and Khalil Wilson, who each accepted sentences between 25 and 30 years for their roles in the 2016 Biltmore Street shooting. These sentences reflected the severity of the crimes and the danger associated with the ongoing beefs. The federal courts outlined the damage caused by the fraud, including losses exceeding $2 million across multiple states. The judges emphasized the organized nature of the crime and the danger surrounding the violence tied to the group. The federal tone remained steady throughout the entire process because the agencies focused on presenting facts without emotion, and their reports highlighted how surveillance eventually defeated the secrecy of the scam operations. Detection systems grew stronger every year, and band gangs' digital footprints created clear paths for investigators. The agencies treated the case as an example of modern identity theft, and they emphasized that fraud at this scale always attracts long-term attention. The detailed case file showed how each part of the operation contributed to the overall downfall of the crew, and the documentation made it clear that the investigation was methodical. The indictment era marked a turning point for band gang because the legal pressure changed their identity permanently, and the crew entered a period of uncertainty that shaped their future. The years of scamming created opportunities and fame, but the federal shutdown revealed how fragile their empire became once investigators connected the pieces. The losses impacted their movement, and the pressure resembled another form of conflict they had to face. The legal consequences shaped their next phase, and Detroit watched closely as the crew navigated the fallout from a case that developed quietly over several years. Detroit moved with a strange tension during late 2019 and early 2020, and people began whispering that someone out there wanted band gang members gone. The talk floated through barbershops, gas stations, and West Side corners, and older dudes claimed the energy around 6 Mile felt heavier than anything they remembered from previous years. The younger guys heard the whispers too, and the tone carried a seriousness that made everyone feel a cold shift happening beneath the surface. Rumors traveled faster than music at that time, and the streets believed a real plan was forming against them. Every crew member sensed something off, and quiet warnings passed between friends as they moved around their neighborhoods carefully. The pressure built slowly until moments arrived that changed everything for band gang permanently. The first devastating hit came on September 22, 2020, when band gang Jizzle P, also known as AJ or Apple Jacks, sat inside a Chrysler 300 with another man while his mother stood in the driveway of their home on Fielding Street. The evening seemed calm until a gunman appeared near the vehicle and opened fire without hesitation, and the shots tore through the car before anyone had time to react. Neighbors heard the burst of gunfire followed by the sounds of Jizzle's mother screaming in pure shock as she watched her son collapse right in front of her. The scene shook the entire block because many people respected Jizzle for staying focused on music and avoiding unnecessary conflict. Paramedics arrived quickly, but the injuries were fatal, and the news spread across Detroit within minutes. Fans posted tribute messages online, and fellow artists described Jizzle as a quiet worker who minded his business and stayed focused on his craft. Detroit rarely reacts strongly to street violence, but this hit struck the city hard because he died in front of his mother, and that detail stayed with people long after. Lonnie faced his own near-death experience months before the killing, and that attack showed how serious things became for anyone linked to band gang. He traveled to Las Vegas for business and relaxation, but people tracked his movements and ambushed him in a violent attack that left him shot in the head, hand, mouth, and wrists. Doctors found bullet fragments lodged inside his skull, and he survived through luck and determination alone. The medical team expected him to remain hospitalized for an extended period, yet Lonnie checked himself out within 48 hours and moved around Las Vegas with visible bandages. Detroit heard about the shooting quickly, and people called his survival unbelievable because the injuries looked impossible to overcome. Lonnie later admitted the recovery took a severe toll, and he struggled mentally after that moment, but he continued pushing forward because he felt obligated to stay active. The Vegas shooting confirmed that the pressure against band gang reached a level few expected to see. Only weeks after Jizzle P passed, Lonnie's close friend Skinny was killed in Houston during October 2020, and that loss deepened the emotional damage surrounding the crew. Skinny was not a rapper, but he held major influence within their circle, and his presence offered stability during chaotic times. He visited Houston for personal reasons, but someone targeted him while he drove a Porsche through the city. The attack left him dead before help arrived, and Detroit learned about the death through calls and social media posts hours later. People who knew Skinny described him as solid and supportive, and losing him added another layer of grief to an already painful period. His death hit Lonnie harder than most people realized, and the momentum of consecutive tragedies began draining the crew emotionally. In November 2020, band gang suffered another devastating loss when Paid Will was killed, and his death became the most confusing of all because the situation did not fit the usual Detroit beef narrative. Initial reports claimed he was shot during an altercation, but the details remained unclear for days. Some rumors suggested rivals targeted him, while others mentioned betrayal by someone close. Months later, stories circulated claiming his death resulted from a dispute over stolen money involving someone connected to his family, and people repeated versions stating he confronted a person who took cash from his stash. Those stories mentioned an older relative intervening during the confrontation and shooting Will in self-defense, but none of these accounts were formally confirmed. Detroit remained uncertain about the exact truth, but the consistent detail was that the death did not stem from a direct street beef, the way many assumed initially. The tragic irony rested in the possibility that someone with a strong street legacy may have died during a household conflict rather than an organized attack. Fans struggled to understand the situation fully, and the confusion created painful conversations across the city. Paid Will's death devastated Bandgang because he represented stability within the crew, and his presence held major weight in their movement. Friends described him as a smart thinker who handled money carefully and avoided unnecessary chaos, and his personality balanced out the louder members. Losing him only a short time after losing Jizzle P and Skinny created emotional wounds that impacted every remaining member. The crew moved around Detroit with heavy grief, and the emotional burden affected their motivation to record music or maintain their momentum. They felt watched, hunted, and drained, and the combination of fear and sadness made it difficult to focus on their careers. Detroit recognized the shift because Bandgang's energy changed noticeably after the string of deaths. The year 2020 became known as the period when opposition finally caught Bandgang in ways the crew could not avoid, and the event signaled the end of their carefree era. Members felt pressure from the streets, rivals, law enforcement, and personal tragedies that stacked on top of one another. Their internal morale dropped significantly because the deaths did not feel random, and the surviving members carried trauma that affected their confidence and stability. Lonnie moved cautiously after surviving his shooting, but he also admitted the emotional damage felt heavier than the physical injuries. Meso described the year as a period when everything collapsed, and Biggs struggled through house arrest while trying to support the remaining members. Detroit watched Bandgang shift into a group processing grief instead of celebrating success, and the world around them looked different because every corner reminded them of their losses. The pressure of 2020 reshaped their identity completely, and the crew entered a phase defined by survival rather than ambition. The 3 major deaths within a short period changed the future of the group permanently, and the emotional destruction left behind would influence everything they did afterward. Lonnie carried heavy weight after 2020 because the losses broke him in ways he had trouble explaining, and the depression settled deep as he tried processing the deaths of Jizzle P, Skinny, and Paid Will. He already battled trauma from the Vegas shooting, where bullets tore through his head, hand, and wrist, and the near-death experience stayed with him daily. He also lost a child previously, and that pain returned during quiet moments when he tried reflecting on everything happening around him. The pressure made normal life difficult because every memory felt connected to someone he could no longer call or visit. Lonnie moved through Detroit quietly while trying to stabilize himself emotionally, and many people noticed how different his energy became. The turning point came when his daughter asked him to start rapping again because she believed his music kept him alive and focused, and her words pushed him out of the depression long enough to think clearly. He understood she worried about him mentally, and the thought of disappointing her weighed heavier than the fear he carried. That moment convinced him to pick up the pen again, and he entered the studio, determined to release the pain he held inside. Lonnie treated the request like a lifeline, and he credited that conversation for helping him regain strength during a time when everything around him felt unstable. The Hard to Kill album grew from those circumstances, and the project reflected a clear tonal shift from earlier Bandgang releases. Lonnie's voice sounded different because the trauma shaped his delivery, and he spoke with raw honesty instead of focusing on flashy lyrics or energetic punchlines. The project explained how it felt to survive multiple shootings, bury friends, and push forward despite emotional exhaustion. He avoided dramatic exaggeration and focused on truth, and fans respected the vulnerability because the pain came through each line distinctly. The project served as an open diary documenting his suffering, and listeners connected with the authenticity he offered. The lyrics carried moments where he described hospital experiences, nights of anxiety, memories of friends he lost, and fears that followed him daily through Detroit. He explained the difficulty of trusting people after surviving targeted attacks, and expressed how grief affected his mental stability. The project contained anger, sadness, guilt, and reflection without relying on fabricated stories, and that honesty allowed fans to understand the weight he carried. Detroit rappers and listeners praised the album for its transparency because many recognized the emotional toll survival brings in environments shaped by violence. Lonnie recorded from a place of truth, and the project became one of his strongest releases because it reflected real suffering rather than manufactured aggression. Maso played an important role during this phase because he spoke publicly in interviews about the experiences surrounding the federal indictment and the moments leading to the crew's downfall. He told stories about Indictment Day, describing how agents surrounded houses and executed search warrants while members scrambled to react. His behind-the-scenes accounts explained the confusion, fear, and pressure that BandGang faced as the investigation unfolded. Masso remained calm while speaking, and viewers respected his willingness to describe details without glorifying the events. His interviews helped fans understand the deeper challenges the group encountered and why certain decisions occurred. The crew attempted to regroup slowly after the tragedies, and they worked on reconnecting members who remained free and active. They shot new visuals around Detroit, and the videos showed survivors moving cautiously while honoring the people they lost. The energy inside those visuals felt different from earlier eras because the members carried heavy emotional baggage, but they continued recording to maintain their presence. Their attempt to rebuild lacked the excitement of their early days because trauma shaped their new direction, yet the music remained meaningful to fans who understood the hardships behind the lyrics. They supported each other through quiet conversations, shared memories, and renewed commitment to their craft. Detroit's rap landscape evolved significantly during this time because younger artists began shaping the new scam rap wave that spread across the city. Groups like the Shitty Boys and rappers like Babytron took inspiration from earlier BandGang releases and carried scam rap into the national spotlight. Their flows featured intricate punchlines referencing carding culture, and their sound pulled heavily from the foundations BandGang helped create. The underground followed this wave closely, and the newer artists gained wide attention because their styles matched the digital era of fraud culture. Detroit fans acknowledged BandGang as pioneers of the swipe rap lane, and many credited them for influencing the next generation of scam-oriented artists. The city appreciated the legacy despite the tragedies surrounding the crew, and their impact continued shaping Detroit even as they struggled through emotional recovery. The Hard to Kill era marked a transition for BandGang because the surviving members accepted their new reality and used music to document their pain and rebuild their identity. Lonnie's voice guided this chapter, and his vulnerability helped fans understand the cost of street involvement and the difficulty of surviving multiple tragedies. The crew moved through Detroit with quiet determination while holding memories of the people they lost, and their influence remained strong across the city's evolving rap landscape. The shift toward emotional honesty helped define their legacy, and listeners recognized that survival carried weight far heavier than fame. BandGang entered the mid-2020s carrying scars that shaped every decision, and the crew tried holding things together while processing grief that never truly faded. The most painful moment came in 2025 when BandGang Boom was killed outside a family repast, and over 100 rounds filled the air as people ran for cover. His mother spoke afterward about losing another son to Detroit violence, and her words reminded the city how deep the pain ran. The surviving members kept recording, releasing visuals, and trying to stay consistent, but the losses changed their energy permanently. Their influence lived on through newer scam rap artists who followed their blueprint, and Detroit recognized their place in history as pioneers shaped by money, pressure, and tragedy. Their story remained a reminder of how quickly success turns heavy in a city where survival defines everything.